Hello and welcome to my channel. In today's video we're doing this fish in watercolour, and it's something I haven't really tackled before. I haven't done many fish, but we were doing them the other day in class and I came across this photograph on Pixabay. So although he's rather a grumpy looking fish, it's a really nice shape to draw and his lovely colours. So I've changed the colours slightly just to be a bit brighter, and I just wanted to talk through the colours I've used before I start. So I've used exactly the same colours in the background as I have on the fish, but obviously I've added more pigment to the fish to make him stand out against the background. So the colours I've used are Windsor Blue, Windsor Green, Quinacridine Gold, Windsor Violet, and then for some of the darker areas on the fish I've used Windsor Violet with some ultramarine added. And then I've got ultramarine and burnt sienna for the very darkest areas like his eye and the shadow in here. So quite a limited palette really. Now when you're doing water, it's good to use some wet in wet techniques. Now we talk about painting in watercolour wet on wet and wet on dry, but in reality most of the paintings that we end up doing once we get more confident with watercolour tend to be a bit of a combination of both, and you tailor it to the subject that you're doing. So when you're doing water, using wet in wet gives you much more of a watery watercolour feel, and so you want to be doing that. But I've also used wet on dry. So with the background I wet the whole paper first behind the fish, and then I dropped in those three colours of the Windsor Blue, Windsor Green and Quinacridine Gold, four colours, and the Windsor Violet, and just drop them in and let them fade out. You can see how pale those colours have become because there was so much water there. Once that had dried, whilst that was still wet, I used a dry brush to pick out some reedy shapes, and you can see here those are still shining through these other colours that we've put on top. So once that was dry, I then used the same colours with my brush straight from the palette to make these reedy shapes on top, but because it was quite a watery mix still, we've still got the other colours showing through. So it's very sort of impressionistic sea there, and out of the head. And you could do this with coral reefs. You could use so many different colours because there's so much colour under the sea that we don't see. So you could, go really wild with your colours and be very impressionistic with your background. So once that was all dry, I then did the fish. So I did exactly the same thing with him. Sorry, I did put the masking fluid on. So I put the masking fluid on his very lightest areas where we've got the light on the end of his tail there, but not just to catch the highlights, also to make some of the form of him as well. So you can see where the masking fluid was there. Once that was dry, I then wet the whole fish and again just dropped those colours in. I made a slightly thicker mix, dropped the green into the base, the blue into the top, and then the darker colours. Let that dry, take the masking fluid off, and then I did add some detail with that very dark colour, but I didn't go into lots and lots of detail. So if you look at him, you can see all these little scales. We've got all these shapes here and all these lines, and I didn't put all those in. The initial sketch that I did in pencil I kept very loose, and it's not the best, if we look here now it needs to come in more here and things like this, but I did it quite quickly and loosely, and I did exactly the same with the paint. I tried to keep that loose feeling and not be too tight with the drawing. So a little bit of detail with that, but not too much. And mainly that is just to catch these dark areas so that makes his body stand out more. And then right at the end I added some of this iridescent medium. So this is a Winsor & Newton one. It's a silver one. Now if you put this on thickly straight out of the pot, it can tend to be quite opaque and cover your colours up. So I always add some water to it. So I mixed it in the palette with some water and then applied it with my brush over the watercolour once it was dry, and I'm hoping that that's going to show up to the camera, that little bit of iridescence. And by just putting it on the fish and not in the sea, it again makes the fish the focal point and makes him stand out from his background. But of course you could go wild and put it in the sea as well. You could make some bubbles going up, and in fact you could make a lot more detail in the sea. You could add some darker areas. I mean, you could actually do it the same as is on here as well if you like. Get this stone in and some of these darker areas behind. This actually looks like wall, so I'm not sure whether he's actually in a tank. He may be in a tank. Okay, so I will put the link to the photograph in the description below if you do want to have a go at drawing this little fella here yourself. So in the meantime, enjoy your watercolour painting. I hope you found that useful. Any questions, if you want to pop those in the comments below. If you're joining us for the first time, then thank you very much. We're here every Monday and Thursday afternoon with a variety of art tutorials and demonstrations in all kinds of media. So thanks for joining me, and bye for now.
you.